Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sy Huffer and Friends. This is a podcast designed to help you flourish at life and relationships. I'm your host, Sy Huffer, the lead pastor of the Gathering Christian Church here in Naples, Florida. And the reason why we do Sy Huffer and Friends with Sy's friends is because I believe that I have the best friends in the whole world. And they help me flourish at life and relationships because they help me flourish in those areas. Me sharing them with you will help you flourish in those areas. So this month we are focusing in on different topics, and each month we focus on a different topic, and this month we're focusing on parenting. And what does it mean to be a godly parent? How to raise up your kids in the faith? How do you teach your kids, those little rascals that you're trying to keep alive? How do you not just keep them alive, but how do you help them thrive and what it means to be a follower of Jesus? So if you like what's happening here, you can follow along Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Today, I am super excited to get to interview and hang out with my friend, mentor, spiritual father, Ken Idleman. And so Ken was my first, I think I can get this right. He was my first boss's boss's boss. That might be the right layers.
That's it.
But I did an internship right out of college with Ken in preaching and leadership. He was so gracious to me, gave me every opportunity that I could have ever asked for, and eternally grateful for the investment he made in my life. So Ken, tell us about yourself, about your family, your story, ministry, and what you do for a living.
Sure thing. Well, how far back do you want me to go? I was born in August the 18th, 1947, so I'm a post-depression baby. My mother and dad had my older sister and my older brother, and then they waited about 11 years, and they had me. And I would learn later that my mother had a number of miscarriages before I was born. So they intended to have their children closer together. But I wound up being separated, being younger by 10, 11 years. And then my younger brother, David, is 2 years younger than I. And I was raised in a non-Christian home for the first few years of my life. But by the time I was age 10, I overheard the gospel being presented to my mother and dad. I was sitting in the floor and overhearing the gospel, and mother and dad became believers, accepted the Lord, and were baptized the following Sunday. And I told them that I overheard that, I believe that, I want to be a Christian too. So I was actually baptized with my 38-year-old father and my 36-year-old mother. And in high school, uh, I was more of a Pharisee than I was an evangelist. I'm sorry to say, in a way, although being a being a Pharisee, it did help me avoid a lot of the vices that my peers in high school were engaged in. And so at 10, I'm baptized. At 15, I commit my life to full-time Christian leadership. At 18, I'm off to Bible college. At 20, I meet my wife, the love of my life, Kayleen, and we are introduced. And exactly a year later, we're married. She's 18, I'm 20, and I'm in a preaching ministry by 21. The next day after I was married I was married on the 17th of August. So the 18th of August was my 21st birthday, and I've been involved in local church ministry and full-time evangelism. At 25, I went down to teach at Ozark Christian College, taught for 4 years, decided that I wanted to look for a church about the time that the president of the college retired, and the trustees said, we want to change your responsibilities from the classroom to the administrative office. So if you don't do a good enough job in the classroom, they've got to find something for you. And so I was president and chancellor for about 30 years at Ozark, and so 34 years at Ozark. And then at 59, 60, I wanted the local church is my first love, and I wanted to be a senior pastor. So I was called to Crossroads Christian Church in Evansville, Indiana, and moved there and was there for 10 years. And that's where I got connected with Sy. I'd heard such good things about him. I wanted to plug him in, knowing that my investment in him and our church's investment in him would pay huge dividends. And that has proven to be true. And after 10 years at Crossroads, I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and my wife and I went to work with the Solomon Foundation and as a church consultant. So for the last 10 years, I just did retire in June of 2025. For the last 10 years, I've been working with pastors of churches across the country and helping them with um, stewardship development, leadership development, strategic planning, and crisis management, and those kinds of things. And along the way, my wife and I had 3 children, and this is what you're interested in this podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We
Well, and I
place a real
want
high.
to pause right there real quick.
Yeah, sure.
And I just want to give some context to a couple of things. Like, just you walking through all of that is so helpful for people to hear, because it's impressive. Like when people hear your story, like a preacher, preaching, leading a college raises up preachers, goes and preaches after he does that for 3 decades at a large church, and is faithful to that ministry because he cares about being I heard you say so many times, I'm the chief shepherd. Like, that's my job. Like, I shepherd people, and I saw you do that. And you, like, there's that book about elders, like, that smell like sheep. You smelled like sheep, and like that was who you were. And then you went and consulted other preachers and helped other, with the Solomon Foundation. You were teaching, consulting, helping lead through crisis, like experienced, successful, faithful pastor. And that's not the most impressive thing about you.
That's
like
very
the most
kind.
impressive thing about you is that you, through all of that, the way you treat your wife and the way you raise your kids, that is the most impressive thing about you. I think 100%. The closer you get to Ken, the more impressed you are with what you find and who you get to learn about. And so, while I love hearing that story of all your ministry, yes, this next part, like this is where the bread and butter is. Like, this is where I feel like people really get to see Ken Idleman and what he brings to the table, and I think your greatest legacy, hands down. And so you have, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I agree with that. I really, really feel like my children, all 3 of our children, are standing on my shoulders. They're reaching higher, they're seeing farther. And the most important, you said it in your prayer, the most important disciples that we make are the ones that are in our own home. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
So we had 3. We had 3, a girl, boy, and a girl. And our daughter, Carissa, our older daughter, is married to a pastor. Brian Seitz is the Mullesite pastor, one of the Mullesite pastors at Southeast Christian Church in Louisville, Kentucky. It's a church of about 2,500 in attendance. They're getting ready to totally relocate and have a ground up build because their Mullesite is just really exploding in that rural suburb of Louisville. Carissa, our daughter, oversees the human trafficking ministry at Southeast Christian Church. So she has a very different kind of ministry. It's not one that gets promoted. It's one that takes place kind of under the radar. It has to because of the nature of it. She's built bridges between law enforcement and the local church that have really made the human trafficking ministry distinctive in this, not only the city of Louisville, but in the country, I think. Then our son Kyle is the senior pastor of Southeast Christian Church in Louisville. He's a fairly well-known author. He's a best-selling author. In fact, just this past week, somebody sent me, they said, "Have you seen this?" And they sent me a picture of a giant gold sign in Times Square in New York City. And the message on it was, Jesus Christ is King. And then underneath it, it has a line through political ally, personal therapist. In other words, he's not what he's not and what he is. Jesus Christ is King. And it was advertising the book. Kyle Idleman and Mark Moore have jointly written 2 books. One of them just came out, and it's called The Missing Messiah. And so this ad is going to be up in Times Square. It's a huge billboard. It's going to be up in Times Square for a month. And Jesus Christ is King. All this talk about no kings, and this boldly says Jesus is King. He is not your personal therapist. He's not your political ally, not your business partner. And so I called Kyle. I said, "What about this? Don't you think this is something your parents would be interested in knowing?" You know. So anyway,
just like a boy, huh? He doesn't tell you what happened at school, doesn't tell you what's going on at work.
That's it. Well, then our younger daughter, Camille, works with Go Ministries and Blessing Ranch, and she has consolidated these 2 ministries on a property in Louisville, Kentucky, 200 acres. They're going to be developing a whole ministry there outside of Louisville in the beautiful rolling hills of Kentucky as a place for healing, for Christian leaders and their families, and also the place where Go Ministry is launched. Go Ministry is a large mission in Dominican Republic, and they're doing church planting. They have a goal of planting 1,000 churches in 10 years. And in that process, they have to have worship leaders for these churches. Many of them will be more house churches with memberships of 50 and 60 people. But our son-in-law, Matt, has 189 Latinos that are being prepared as worship ministers for these churches that they're planning. And Camille is working with Blessing Ranch and Go Ministries, and that it's just a real exciting work. So all 3 of our children are at ages 52, 50, and 45, 46, I think, are all in full-time ministry. They and their husbands, or in Kyle's case, his wife, and then we've got some grandkids that graduated from the college where Sy was trained, where I've served for several years, and one of them is a youth pastor in Boca Raton, Florida, and a daughter and her husband that are at First Christian Church in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in a discipleship ministry, and then we've got 3 that are preparing to do worship ministry, and so that's kind of it. We've got 31 in our tribe now, but we have, if you can believe this, we'll have 7 great grandchildren by October of 2026. So we've got 4 now. We've got 3 more coming, 1 in May, 1 in July, and 1 in October. And praise God, they're all walking with the Lord, love serving the Lord, and thank God we nobody's gone off the rails yet. And some people ask me about it, and I say, well, our children had a good mother, our grandchildren had a great grandmother, and our great grandchildren have had a great grandmother. So anyway,
I love that.
One thing I did right, Sy, that you also did right, married well, and that's
right. That's
a
number
big
1
part of discipling your kids. It sure is.
That's right.
Am I
they did
answering
say
the question?
You are. The good Lord said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth," and the Idlemans are doing it, right?
We took him literally on that. Yeah.
Well, so hey, let me walk you through some of these questions. So like that legacy is beautiful. And what's so incredible about that is that the fact that you were doing vocational ministry on top of all of that. You were involved in the church, you were leading a Bible college, you were teaching, preaching, traveling a lot. And yet through it all, you maintained a priority and intentionality of not sacrificing your family on the altar of ministry.
Yeah.
Right. And saying, no, my family's my number one church.
Yeah.
And so that's my number one flock that I'm shepherding as a father. So what did you believe your primary responsibility as a father was?
Twofold. Number one, to be a model, and number two, to be a mentor, and to be intentional about both of those things. To be a model, I think that our kids have a radar that they can tell when mom or dad are not being real. They're not authentic, and so we were determined that we were going to be real disciples of Jesus if we wanted to raise real disciples of Jesus. And so such things as every night I was at home without fail. I would put the children to bed with Bible stories or Bible reading or and prayer and spiritual counsel. Kids like to talk at night. They don't want to go to sleep, so they want to talk. So talk to them about things that matter, about deeper things, and don't do anything to miss that time. There were times when Monday Night Football was on, and I was into the game. I didn't want to, and that was before video recorders, so I couldn't push pause and then come back to it or record it so I could see it later. I missed the game. To go back and kneel down beside my children's bedside and lay a hand on their forehead and pray for them specifically, personally, and each one individually. And I was consistent about that, and that's one of the things that I did right that I would do over again. And then in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, we met at the breakfast table. Of course, it's busy. Kids are getting ready to go to school. You can't take a lot of time. We had the 1-minute Bible. So we had a 1-minute Bible exposure and prayer. And then sometimes my daughter said, "Daddy, we cannot come down this. We're not ready." You know, they're going to have to get their hair right and their clothes right. And I said, "Sorry, girls, this is who we are. 7:30, right here, down here. This is what we do. This is who we are." And when the girls got to be in their 20s, they come back and said, "Dad, we know now what you were doing, and we want to do that with our kids too." And so it's inconvenient sometimes. It's a challenge sometimes, but if it's a priority, you'll find a way to get it done. And the consistency of the nighttime ritual and that little morning moment, and then when I ran the carpool, um, as I drove along, I had a prayer for the kids for that day, and we sang a little song. Nothing will happen to you today, nothing good, nothing bad. Nothing will happen to you today without passing through your Father's hands. And that little chorus reminder, after a while, they'd roll their eyes. I'd sing it anyway. I didn't care. I wanted them to know that whatever they experienced, good or bad, in the course of that day, that God was in control and He was allowing it for some good purpose in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so those were things that I think mattered. Meal times were both fun times and teaching times. You got to teach your kids manners. You don't want to raise barbarians, so you got to teach your kids manners. That was Kayleen's job, and my job was to stimulate level 5 conversation at the table.
There you go.
And so we might try to make meal times fun and yet good learning, good conversation times.
That's so good. Can you share? You've shared with me before how you said model and mentor, and I think that those are two super good words. And the first one is model. You've told me stories about your kids that would kind of want to see if you were legit.
Oh yeah.
Like they wanted to know if like you talk the talk out there in front of people preaching and that kind of stuff, but do you walk the walk? And they would do things to kind of see, is dad really, is he really buying what he's selling, basically?
Yeah. Well, and you know, my girls, if we're walking through the mall and an attractive woman is coming from the other direction and walks past, my girls would look at me, and this is when they were younger, a teenage, like early teens. They wanted to know if my dad's, or if their dad's head was turned in that moment, and I was, and I remember being aware of that, and so I wasn't gonna I wasn't gonna let down there. And Kyle said he used to go to. He said after we went to bed, he said sometimes I would get up and sneak down the hall, and if the TV was on, and you were watching TV, I would watch and see if you would change stations, or you know, when a Victoria's Secret commercial came on, whether you would change the channel, or you know, and I said, when he told me that, I mean, I thought, oh boy. So I said, well, did you ever, were you ever disappointed in me? And he said, Dad, I never saw you um, look twice, or you know, I mean, you're in the family room by yourself, and you got the TV on, the kids are in bed, you're still got to be the same person, because they are watching you. The radar is up. If you want to be a model, you got to embrace authenticity and and purity, and you need to get a handle on sins of the mind. And you know, there are several kinds of sins of commission. You know the difference between right and wrong, moral and immoral, good and evil, and you do what's right, choose to do the wrong thing. Or sins of omission, when you know what's right to do and you don't do it. Then sins of the mind. And then fourthly, unintentional sins. Like Peter didn't intend to deny Jesus when the servant girl put him on the spot outside of his illegal trial. But sins of the mind, if you could get control of that, you get it'll take you down the road of not committing unintentional sins. And sins of commission, sins of omission, those are easier to control. Sins of the mind, unintentional sins, those are the ones you get hold of if you want to be a consistently good model for your children. Incidentally, also, I remember our 50th anniversary. Kayleen and I had a conversation, and I told her, I said, I'm just so thankful that God made me a one-woman man. And I said, have you ever doubted me at all in that respect? And she said, no. She said, I have never seen you in 50 years of marriage. I've never seen you look twice at another woman. Well, I'm not patting myself on the back. I have the same thoughts flicker through my mind that any man does. But I am so glad that model and mentor role. It's hard to be a good mentor if you're not a good model, because if
that's right,
what you're teaching isn't backed up by your life, James chapter 3 verse 1, you're going to be judged more harshly.
I love that, and I think part of that, there's a couple things I just want to comment on, like the whole, like, you know, your girls watching you, you know, at the mall or whatever. I have remembered that when you told me that, and that is something that I you know, it reminds me of Job, when Job says, I made a covenant with God with my eyes,
that I would not look lustfully at a woman. Yeah.
It's not with another person. It's not with accountability partner. It's like, and that's why you by yourself in the family room with the TV on, you know, your son didn't catch you and was disappointed with you because your covenant was not with, you know, other people. It was with God.
That's
It
true.
was with God over your eyes. And
Yeah.
so when it's with you and him, he is always there. You're like, no, we have an agreement here, right? Like we've
Mm-hmm.
made a deal, and I've committed my eyes and my mind to set them on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God, right? Like that's my commitment to him and to his church, because I think that's what's best. The other thing that I remember you always talking about that rings true, you know, you can't be a great mentor if you're not a good model. And what does it mean to be a good model? It's integrity. You always talked about how integrity was being an integrated person.
Mm-hmm.
You're the same person on stage that you are in the family room,
Right.
that you are in the bedroom, that you are in whatever room you walk into. That this is who I am, and this is not a chameleon. I'm not like this in one. You know, I'm not compartmentalizing my life. I don't have to be scared of what room I'm walking into. These people see me like this and those people see me like that. No, I'm consistently the same person wherever I go. And it reminds me of when Bill Hybels used to always talk about how everything rises and falls on leadership. And then I
Mm-hmm.
remember after he had his moral failure and that became public and all that stuff happened, someone wrote an article that said, everything rises and falls on leadership, but leadership rises and falls on character.
Yeah.
And it is, you cannot be a great mentor if you're not a good model.
Yeah. Character begets trust, and trust is primary leadership capital. If people trust you, they will follow you. If they don't trust you, they won't follow you. And to be an influential, long-term influential leader, character trumps everything else. And that's why you have planted a church in Naples, Florida, that is thriving, because you are that person. You are the same person off stage as you are on stage. And in this day and time, uh, that kind of leadership connects, and is in contrast to a lot of the shallow, superficial leaders out there that are eventually going to crash and burn because they're living a duplicitous life. They're one thing in one setting and something else in another setting. One thing with one group and something else with another group. And yeah, just like the elders of the church and the trustees at the college have always been my best friends. I've cultivated friendships with them and maintained friendships through the years with those people. And being able to go back to those places, the Bible college, the local church, and and to reconnect with people is just a deep, satisfying pleasure. And that's a byproduct. I think that's a byproduct of authenticity, integrity, which begets trust. Trust uh, is our leadership cornerstone.
It's everything. That's the currency. What?
Yeah.
So when your kids were young, what mattered most to you? And did that change over time as they got older?
Well, what mattered to me most was the character of the children, and I'm a believer that if you complement their character and build their character, the accomplishments will come along. But if you focus on the accomplishments, or how pretty your daughters are, or how handsome your son is, or what a good athlete your son is, or what a good musician your daughters are, if you focus on that and complement that and underpin that, you're not necessarily going to get the character with that. But if you complement their character and focus on the character development of your children, when you watch them befriend someone who is friendless, when you watch them be generous, when you watch them be respectful, when you see those kinds of demonstrations, you zero on those and say, that looked like Jesus to me, and I'm really proud of that. And I remember telling my son when he was in his first years of high school, I said, son, if you honor God, if you honor your commitments to God and someday the family that you'll have, I will be proud of you, even if you dig ditches and sweep the streets. But I said, if you're president of the United States and you don't honor your commitments, I'll be ashamed of you. And I wanted it to be just that clear to them that my affirmation of them is based on who they are, not what they do or what kind of grades they make or how many points they score. And I think you got to be intentional about that as a parent, because it's real easy to gravitate toward their accomplishments.
Yeah.
You're proud. Yeah. You're proud of it. Okay. But and all I'm saying is don't, go ahead and be proud of it, but be prouder of the evidence of their character, Christ-likeness.
I love the idea of catching them doing good. Like you didn't talk much about discipline. It was more about, hey, when I saw them do something, I want them to repeat. I saw them doing something that looked like Jesus. I called it out. Hey,
yeah,
I see you befriending that person. That looks like Jesus. I'm proud of you for that. Or I see you being generous.
I got a little story about that. I remember when Kyle played basketball, and in one particular moment, there was a fast break down the floor, and the guy was ahead of him and went up for the shot, and he blocked the shot, and the young man took a hard fall. He didn't get called for a foul, but the kid, the other player, hit the deck, and he was frustrated and mad and thought he should have had a foul called, and so he was on the floor there, and Kyle offered him his hand to help him up, and this other player slapped his hand away, and you could hear the crowd watching the game. It was, oh, and it was really interesting. Kyle extended his hand to him a second time, and the kid took his hand that time. So that night, he's going to bed, and we're talking about the game. I said, I got to tell you, it wasn't the 28 points that impressed me tonight. It wasn't that. It was when that guy went down for a fast break, and I saw you offer him your hand not once but twice. I said you could feel in the crowd the impression that kind of character move made in that moment, in the heat of the competition. And so he heard that, and it reinforced that sportsmanship witness, Christian witness through sportsmanship kind of thing. And so those are those little teaching moments, those little mentoring moments. You can seize on that and shine a bright light on it.
I love it. And it's I think it's as simple as kind of like you said, that reminds me of Jesus. Like you're pointing back to, the character and to the ultimate model and mentor, right?
Yeah.
Which is what you're trying to have them do. How did you teach your kids to love God and not just obey the rules, right? Like you said, growing up, like you became a Christian, and then you probably more a Pharisee, before you were like have a relationship with God, which did keep you. I mean, Pharisees can look like great teenagers, right? Like they can look like reliable kids. And if you raise some Pharisees up, and Pharisee is just this, the Jewish religious leaders of the day, they cared way more about following rules and dotting every I and crossing every T than they cared about like caring for people and getting in the mess with loving messy people. And so they liked rules more than probably actually God. And so with that, how did you teach your kids to actually have a loving, flourishing relationship with God and not just obey a set of rules?
I think you, again, it goes back to the modeling and mentoring. They saw me loving lost people. They saw me loving church people and accepting people where they were and trying to work with them and trying to be patient with the Lord's people and trying to be compassionate toward lost people and we took people into our home from time to time. Not everybody can do that, but we had a home that had kind of two living levels, and so we'd taken people into our home that in a couple of cases, men who were going through divorce, once an abused wife that took refuge in our home, and so they saw that kind of heart for people, and they fell right in with that, and they even as adults today, they are very compassionate, uh, sympathetic, non-critical toward people, and I think they got that because we didn't judge people before we showed them kindness and hospitality. So I think there were some real life experiences and examples, and of course, kids get pulled into that because they're sitting around the dinner table with somebody who's staying in a bedroom and downstairs because we didn't sugarcoat it. We told our kids what was going on in the life of that person. We didn't try to be deceptive, very upfront about it. And so uh, they had a very real grasp that sometimes people needed help. And as Christians, that's our role to try to be helpful. So, and I think they saw us getting fulfillment out of doing that. And so they naturally wanted to do it. That's why I think our daughter has gotten into the human trafficking ministry, which is, believe me, not for everybody. That is a tough one.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're looking for strokes and compliments and recognition, don't go into the human trafficking ministry. And
I'll tell you.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'll tell you that what you described I think is really brilliant. Like, first of all, kids, it's all about it's more caught than taught for a kid, right?
Yes,
like
correct.
You can try and have the right words and describe the difference between loving God and obeying rules and what a Pharisee is. That's actually not as important as living the life, walking the walk. And it doesn't mean that you break the rules, right? That's not what we're encouraging. But I think like what you described was so fascinating. I don't know if you even know it, but like, you don't break the rules because you weren't getting divorces. You weren't struggling with addiction. Like, that wasn't your story. You were following the way of God. But when you follow the rules, you follow the way of God, and yet at the same time love rule breakers. You love the people who aren't. You love the people who are in messes. Somehow that they're not living the way you are.
Yeah.
And yet you love them in spite of that. That translate to that this is so much more than just following a set of rules. This is about a relationship. It's about loving God, loving others, and pursuing those that are broken and need. And that is the tension that I think people don't know what to do with Jesus.
Yeah.
And with people who follow Jesus.
Yes. And I tell you, it really is important to, if at all possible, to have that partnership with your wife or your husband, as the case may be, so your children see consistency. Mom and dad are on the same page with this. They are both invested in ministry, and with them, it's a life calling. It's not a vocational calling. I'm not dependent on being paid to be ministry focused. with people, dealing redemptively with everybody that crosses your path, seeing that God doesn't bring people into your orbit unless he wants to use you to be some kind of a help to them, an encouragement, a blessing, a witness, and when you do that, it that's what Jesus did. You know, he went about doing good, preaching and teaching and counseling and healing and caring, and we do that. That's who we are, and doing it in the context of the church is great because you can devote your full time and attention to it, and have a living, and I think as a result of that, organically, your children will do a double take. You know, do I want to go work with Toyota, IBM, or not that those aren't some valid jobs and places to go, and there's work to do there, and ministry to extend in those contexts. But boy, there's nothing like waking up every day and you know that everything you're doing in the course of that day is going to make a difference in the kingdom of God.
I love that. One of the last questions I want to ask you, how do you intentionally invest in your grandkids' faith? Like, you have this legacy and this sweet relationship, not just with your kids, but you have done it with your grandkids. And so talk to me a little bit about how do you invest in them, and how do you see your role as a grandparent in their spiritual walk and their spiritual journey?
I had two grandfathers. I had a maternal grandfather and a paternal grandfather. I did not have a serious conversation with either of my grandfathers. I didn't even know my great grandparents. They were deceased by the time I was very young. And but my grandfathers, I never had a substantive conversation, a real what I would call close relationship with them. And Kayleen and I decided that we wanted to amplify what their parents were going to be doing with them. We wanted to strengthen that, amplify that by our contribution as grandparents. So generally we ask permission to do that. Like, for example, I have 4 grandsons and 7 granddaughters. So the 4 grandsons, I wanted to have substantive conversation with them. So when they turned, I guess it was 13, maybe 14, I got a hold of the book by Philip Morley, Young Man in the Mirror. There's Man in the Mirror, and then there's Young Man in the Mirror, or Young Man in the Mirror. And I got that book for each of the 4 grandsons, and I said, I will pay you X number of dollars. There are 15 chapters in this book. You can come out of this experience with $1,500. I mean, who's going to pay you $100 an hour? I'm going to, and you're going to remember for a long time that your grandfather paid the best wages of any employer you've had, and so for $100 an hour, they spent an hour with me. The deal was they had to have read the chapter, they had to be on time, and they had to come prepared to talk. And if they did that, we would go through that book together. At the end of that book, I'd give them $1,500 toward a car. And so the 4 boys all went through that book with me, and we wound up having conversations about stuff that we would have never talked about if we hadn't had kind of an intentional plan. And so that's one of the things that I don't know where I got the idea. I'm sure it was from somebody else, but it stuck with me, and I did my own version of it, and I'm close to those grandsons today, and they'll talk to me about anything, and they'll come and counsel me about anything because they see me as as a discipling influence. And now they've got a mother and dad, and I'm not intruding on that space. But as a grandmother, what you're doing is strengthening what the parents are wanting to do with the kids. And boy, the boys. I think it would be awkward for me as a grandfather to do anything with the girls. I'll leave that up to their mothers and their grandmother Kayleen. But with the boys, that was an approach that I took, and also we did something very practical. When the grandkids were born, we opened custodial accounts for each one of the grandkids, and we put money into those custodial accounts. And then as it matured through the years, when they turned 18 and graduated from high school and they were ready to go to college, they had some, as it turned out, some significant dollars, enough dollars to give them a jump start that they could graduate from college with minimal debt. I think we have one granddaughter that's got $5,000 student loan. The other kids that have gone to college have all been able to go through with it and graduate without debt. And we didn't pay the whole tab, but we paid a significant part of it, and that will knit your heart to your grandkids if you've been able to be generous with them and help them toward the goals that they have for their future, or help them wind up with, if they get a scholarship, they can use that money to put a down payment on a house after they get married.
Right.
And the custodial account had a wedding gift in it as well as college money, and like a down payment on a house. No cars, no depreciating items. You can't spend the custodial account money on anything depreciating. It's got to be education. It's got to be residence, something like that.
Hey, can you share your rule about going on vacation with everybody? Like, you would go on vacation with the kids and grandkids, and it was kind of your hook to say, hey, I want to be involved with all the activities. So if you share that rule, I love that rule.
Yeah, well, first of all, don't skimp on memory making in the family. Don't skimp on memory making. If you want to,
that's good.
You want to skimp in some other area and spend the money on experiences that'll build relationships, that'll make memories, and then what you were referring to, say it again and trigger that thought.
Yeah, you said you have a rule on vacation that when it's all the kids and grandkids around, you want to be involved. You want to be a part of the party, what everybody's doing, and so you have a rule.
Absolutely. So when we take a trip to the beach, and the family is all involved, the deal is if they include Kayleen and me, we'll pay. If they leave us out, they're on their own. So that really works out. You get included a lot. You get included a lot.
I love that. That makes me, that cracks me up, man.
But let me tell you something else, Sy. We've never made a big salary, but we got out of debt. I owned my own home when I was 35, and we've never had any debt since I was 35 years old. I'm now 78 years old. When we made our last move, we downsized significantly, and we did that. We stayed out of debt and we downsized because we want to be free in this season of life to be generous. And my goal is not to leave a big estate for my kids and grandkids and so on. I'm going to do my giving while I'm living, so I'm knowing where it's going. So we love being debt free, so we can be generous. And generosity, I know some people say, "Oh, you're buying your kids' affection." No, you can give without loving, but you can't love without giving. And we love giving to the Lord, and we love giving to our kids and our grandkids, even in this season of life. And this past year, uh, we we distributed to the kids. It was Christmas, and we decided we were going to give each of the couples or individuals, as the case may be, 7 of the 10 of them, or 7 of the 11 of them are married, and soon 8 out of the 11 will be married. But I went to the bank and I got $11,000 in real crisp $100 bills, and I put those 10 $100 bills in each of the envelopes, and we passed them out to the grandkids and had them all open their envelopes at once. And you should have heard the hoops and the hollers at Christmas when they opened up and saw they just counted out the 10 crisp $100 bills. And you know, we're not wealthy, but
yeah,
you don't have to be wealthy to be generous.
that's right.
Great fun.
That's right. So what encouragement would you give to someone who's brand new to faith, brand new to Jesus, like they are just starting this journey, and they could be a parent, their kids could be, 6 months old, their kids could be, 16 years old, they could be grandparents for the very first time, and grandparents whose kids are 16 grandkids are 16 years old. No matter what age, no matter what stage of life, parent, grandparent, they're brand new to Jesus, they want to start investing in kids. What advice would you give them?
I'd say some that won't cost you a dime, and it's most critical, is as grandparents, particularly, or parents for that matter, to intentionally pray for them. I know that's predictable for me to say that, and okay, yeah, right. Go. What else? I'm telling you, it will develop a heart in you for them, and it affects how they respond to you, and the Lord does His work when we pray consistent with what His will is, and His will is that our kids and our grandkids be disciples and be discipled. And so when you pray by name for your grandkids, or your kids or your grandkids, you are making the very best investment you can make. We had a room upstairs in our house in Newburgh. I don't know whether you were ever up there, Sy, but we had stenciled the names of all of our grandchildren around the edge of the bonus room upstairs, and that was the room we went to pray for the grandkids by name, individually, personally. And the kids all went upstairs. They were in that room. They saw their names up there. And they said, "What is that?" And we told them, that is our reminder. And we go into that room to pray for each one of you grandchildren. And London, our youngest grandchild, she's 17 now. She walked into that room. She looked up to the right, and she said, "Oh, look, my name is first." Well, actually, her name was last, but she thought her name was first. So they knew that we cared for them, like on the deepest level, and that investment is critical. And then back to kind of what we said earlier is just the importance of intentionality and consistency, and being intentional about discipling influences, worshiping with your kids, sending them to church camp or to Christ in Youth conferences, um, uh, loving the Christian leaders that are in their world, so they see your admiration for spiritual leadership. Um, these are the kinds of things that will move your kids along a path of positive discipleship, and and you'll see the fruit of that. And it's just consistently doing the things that we've talked about, and not going backwards and not letting down. And the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. So employ whatever self-control you need to make this your highest priority. The most important disciples you'll ever make, your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. And we're on the great grandchildren now, and we are getting to be involved in discipling our great grandchildren. Listen, you offer parents free babysitting. Oh boy, they think that's the greatest. You know how much it costs for a babysitter these days?
Oh, yeah.
So they want to go out to dinner. They know they can drop them off at KK and Papa's, and they're going to have fun because KK and Papa don't have anything else on their agenda but play games and hang out and fix their favorite foods and all that stuff. And my one of my younger great grandchildren, is Hallie Mae, and Hallie Mae is going to be 2 years old. And there was an advertisement in a magazine, and there was somebody evidently that looked like me, and they ad, and so she went up and she pointed to the picture, Papa, 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 and Harrison, her daddy, took a video of her doing that and sent it to me. And I thought, that's great. I mean, when your great grandchildren, I'm not getting ahead of myself here, when your great grandchildren recognize their great grandfather, and that's pretty sweet, and that's pretty rare, and we're pretty humbled by it and very grateful for it.
Wow. Well, there is an element of you reap what you sow. When you've sowed into the lives of your kids and grandkids, you are reaping the fruit of that sowing for decades. And so thank you for being a model and mentor to me and to all of us, hundreds and thousands of pastors all around the world.
One more thing I want to say, and to your church family that's cued in to this conversation, we don't deserve, my wife and I, we've made an effort, but we don't deserve all the credit. The church helped us raise our kids. The people, we exposed them to the Christian community, and the people that they admired most were people that were, quote, church people. And their friends were the sons and daughters of other, quote, church people. And Hillary Clinton says it takes a village. It doesn't take a village. It takes a Christian community. If you want to raise a disciple, and we do, don't we? Then let the community of the church enhance and accelerate that discipling ministry.
That's spot on. That's absolutely spot on. Well, Ken, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experience, your heart with us today. We got more coming down the pike here. Go ahead. Sorry.
I said it's my honor, brother.
Oh, man. Thank you. We have more coming over the next several weeks on this topic and others. So follow along on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube. And always remember that you are made for more. So don't settle for anything less. Have a great day.